Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to a review of one of the weirdest watches that I've looked at in a while. Now, there is nothing wrong with weird, but is there method to the madness here, or is this one just weird for the sake of being weird? That's what we're here to find out. The watch in question is a Laco ATACAMA. Now, even if you haven't heard of the model, I'm sure you've heard of the brand. Laco are a German brand that can trace its origins all the way back to the mid-1920s. In fact, it's their centenary next year. Now, I may think it's weird, but the ATACAMA has been on Laco's roster now for 10 of those 99 years. So clearly it has found its niche, it has found fans and favour. Big brands don't continue with models if they don't sell. But this one is definitely a bit of an odd fish. Now, you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by Laco. I will therefore of course leave a link in the description of this video to the ATACAMA in their store. Now, they sent me this one late last year and I took it up to Queensland with me over Christmas to give it a good run for its money. Indeed, I took it on a boating adventure with my brother-in-law and my nephew, which I posted on Instagram. If you're not already following me, at Just One More Watch, by the way, I'll also leave a link to my Insta in the description of the video as well. Let's begin today by discussing price. Now, there is an automatic version of the ATACAMA powered by an SW200, but that one comes in close to €1,000. I like to keep the channel focused on the slightly more affordable end of the market, which is why I asked them to send me this quartz powered version, which comes in at just over half of that, €530. Of course, check your taxes. Depending on where you are in the world, you might get some money back, or you might be liable for more tax when it arrives, so do your own research. The packaging seems to be the same no matter how much or how little money you spend on a Laco, which is nice because the packaging is very nice. Cardboard outer, there's a kind of leatherette pencil case style inner, 2-year warranty, hang tag, instruction manual and watch. But as you've probably noticed, you get an added bonus with the quartz. You get a fourth hand. Now, GMTs are all the rage at the moment and they have been for the last couple of years, but of course, this being a German watch, it isn't a GMT, it's a UTC, representing Coordinated Universal Time. Look, I suppose if you're going to go for a quartz watch, then why not chuck on an extra complication with the forehand and its ability to track a second time zone? That's actually quite sensible. But there isn't a lot else here I would describe as sensible. It is an unusual looking piece. It's PVD black for a start, which marks it as an outlier, and it has a very unusual case shape, bowl-like, almost like the bottom of a sphere, meaning you get a huge amount of depth when you look obliquely across the dial face. But there are also those weird articulated winglet luglet type things. Now that you have seen the watch in profile, let's do dimensions. There are a couple of these that sound a bit scary, but I'll show you the watch on my average sized wrist in a minute, and it wears better than you think it might do. Especially considering the diameter dimension is 46mm. That is about as big as I have ever covered on the channel. Thickness though is a mere 10.2mm. Now, lug to lug. Are you sitting down? Laco on their website quote this watch as having a lug-to-lug distance of 63mm. That is terrifying. And it's all thanks to those additional metal luglets, winglets, whatever you want to call them. Now, thankfully, they do articulate so they become part of the strap. I'm actually going to give you a second lug-to-lug measurement, measured from the point of articulation, and it's only 44mm. Yeah, this one is definitely a little bit unusual. Lug width is 22mm, which is slightly more normal, and you can swap this rubber strap for something else if you want to. Weight as supplied is 105 grams. Now, that is a very large piece of flat sapphire crystal covering the dial, and this watch manages 200 meters of water resistance thanks in part to a screw down crown, and the movement powering all 4 of those hands is a Ronda 51524. You probably don't want to see that anyway, and you can't see it because of the screw on case back. -10 to +20 seconds per month accuracy and a battery life of just under 4 years. The case back is also PVD and confirms that the watch is made in Germany and it's a GMT. Sorry, UTC. Let's have a look at the case and those luglets then. The case itself is very simple, and obviously because of the PVD finish there's not much to see. It's a knurled bezel which is nice and easy to grip though. But there you go, you can see those luglets doing their stuff. You can also see why there is a 1 centimetre disparity either side between the two lug to lug measurements. 63 would be terrifying if the lugs were fixed, but because they articulate, it's not actually too bad. And I'm sure you've spotted the crown isn't at 3 today, it's at 12 today. Again, weird. Now this is the supplied Laco rubber strap, which is very much dive style with all those perforations, etc. Now it is just on standard spring bars at the far end of those luglets, so if you do want to change it for something else, you can do. The supplied one is fine though, it's Laco branded, has 2 mobile retainers and has PVD hardware, again Laco branded. And I should point out one nice little touch, there's a recessed orange ring on the crown tube reminding you to screw in the crown. You should not be able to see the orange in normal operation. Dial and hands are mostly carried over from the Auto with a couple of changes. The most obvious of which is the addition of 24-hour numerals on the flat central dial surface. You can also see there's an attempt at some day-night shading with the top half of the dial just printed on black, but the bottom half, those numerals are printed on grey. Everything is just printed, by the way, today, nothing is applied. There are some modern looking Arabics in white along with the Laco logo also in white and that UTC marking above a 6 o'clock date complication. The date wheel today also in white. Now I like the colours here, pale orange, pale lime, black and white. I think they all work well together, and I do like having a couple of PVD, DLC, carbon fibre, whatever, black case watches in my personal collection. They do look purposeful, tactical and a bit stealthy in a way that raw steel just can't manage. There is a broad chapter ring which contains minute markers, again just painted on, with prominent rectangles in green at the 5s and a double triangle at the 12 pointing to another triangle on the bezel. Now I'm sure you've noticed this is a countdown bezel, it's not a dive style bezel. When you think about it, naming your watch after one of the driest places on earth, you can't really put a dive style bezel on it. It's not a dive watch. Bezel markings are super bright, they're white on black. Arguably they are the most prominent of all the markings on the watch, and there are a lot of markings on the watch today. Laco describes this as a sports watch, and it sits in their squad and sports section of their website. They refer to emergency services and to the German army in the marketing for this one. It's a busy old dial though, there's a lot going on, even considering it's a 46mm watch head. So how do those luglets make the watch wear? How does it sit on my 7-inch wrist? Well, not too badly. I definitely would not describe this as having an enormous lug to lug. Laco shouldn't even print that 63mm figure on their website because it will just scare people. You can see how those 2 bits of metal articulate and do their best to conform to my wrist. They don't do too badly, but when I switch to a top-down view, it definitely looks a bit weird. I guess if they had put the crown at 3, the watch would have been even bigger and broader on wrist, but maybe they could then have deleted the winglets. What do you think? I've never seen this before on a watch I've had in hand, and I can only think of that Tudor Black Bay P01 that uses this system. Do you know of any other watches that use these winglets? If so, leave me a comment. Now, apart from that, there is a lot of glass here, and because it's flat, you do get substantial bounce back occasionally. It's pretty legible all round though, the hands are simple, and even though they're small relative to the overall size of the watch, they get the job done. The high contrast colour scheme certainly helps. And finally, the pocket shot. It fits me okay, but it does look a little bit unorthodox, and you can see what I mean here about bounce back from the sapphire. Great colours though, Laco's squad range of watches definitely does some interesting things with colour and combinations of colour. Alright, moans and niggles, get ready for it, there are a few here today, starting with the loom. If I don't show you the loom just after the dial and hands, it means I'm saving it for the moans and niggles section because it's not very good. Now it actually looks very good initially, it's super bright, it's multicoloured, it's a lot of fun, just like the watch. But if I fast forward just 1 minute and then slow it down again, you can see that it's got that grainy, painted on loom that never lasts long enough. And if I speed it up again, by the time we get to the end of my 20-minute test, pretty much only the bezel triangle and the second hand remain, i.e. it's useless. The bezel, as noted, is a count down rather than count up bezel, 60 click by the way. Now I'm sure that will please as many people as it displeases, so for the 50% of you that it displeases, you can let out a collective groan now. And while we're on the subject of the bezel, have a look at this top down shot. When the orange triangle is lined up perfectly at the 12, the lines between the numerals at the 45, the 30 and the 15 do not line up with their corresponding markers at 3, 6 and 9. I think the printing may be slightly off on the bezel itself rather than an alignment issue per se. And from this oblique shot you can see that they've only bothered painting the top of the GMT hand in black. The sides are still orange. They really should have painted those as well because you can see them. And personally, I think the GMT, sorry, UTC, numerals on the dial are so small to the point that they're almost pointless. You need to have really sharp eyes if you're actually going to be able to use them effectively. If I put the 3-hander and the 4-hander side by side, it looks like they've carried over the case, the strap, the bezel, the chapter ring, etc. directly and just changed the hands a little and added those 24-hour numerals to the dial. I think they would have been much better off putting minute markers on the dial and putting the 24-hour markers on the chapter ring. That would not only have differentiated the auto and the quartz even further, but it would have made that 4th hand far more usable. And I've already discussed the on-wrist experience. It's better than you might think, but perhaps not as good as it could have been if they hadn't bothered with those winglets. And it's not a fun watch to set either. You end up turning the watch around 90 degrees, unscrewing the crown and doing it that way because that's what you do with 99% of the other watches that exist on planet Earth. It's worth noting that the GMT hand has a smooth sweep. It doesn't move in 1 hour increments, meaning you can time all those awkward places that are half an hour off GMT, sorry, UTC, but you're going to have to make sure that it lines up yourself. And finally, a small point of order on the Laco website. This is part of their squad range as noted, and on that particular page they talk about the clear design and robustness of their squad watches. They also have a pop at quartz, citing how batteries can fail at the wrong moment. That is probably not a great idea to have on the same page as your squad watch listings if one of your squad watches is quartz. So then, what do you think? Perhaps you've gathered from my tone and from that long list of complaints, this one is not for me personally. I like the colours and the combination of complications, but they seem to have overcomplicated it. I think the watch would have been better if it had a crown at 3, perhaps a hidden crown. Perhaps then they could have deleted those winglets and given us hidden lugs. That would have given this big watch a true lug to lug of only 44, resolving a lot of my criticisms along with it. I rather get the feeling then that a lot of these design decisions were made for the sake of it rather than resolving some decades-old design conundrum. Laco makes some fantastic watches and some fantastic value watches. This isn't the best one that I've looked at. So there you have it. On that basis, perhaps you should have a look at some of their Fliegers instead. Either this one or this one, they're the best you can buy for under $500. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I'll see you again in the next one.